listening to New Roads, New Rules, the podcast where women come together to navigate life's big transitions with honesty, humor, and a whole lot of heart. Here are your hosts, Sandi and Terri. Real women, real talk, and ready to ride.
But you're my bestie for life. Yeah, you're the family I choose. Yeah, the best till the end. We can get through this together.
Everyone, today, hi, Terri, I forgot to say hi to you.
Yeah.
I know. Today we're going to talk about perimenopause, menopause, hormones, and weight. A topic women are so frustrated with.
And one everybody's contacted us about.
Right, and especially like us at our age, we're confused about it, right? Like we don't talk about it enough. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, and we wanted to bring someone on who could explain what's actually happening, because Sandi and I can only talk about what's happening to us, and everybody's kind of tired of that. So we're bringing on Dr. Sarah Stombough. She's a family physician and an obesity doctor. I know Sarah personally, so it's great to have her on. I'm excited about that. Go ahead, Sam.
She trained at Creighton University School of Medicine, correct me if I'm wrong, completed her residency at the University of Chicago, and now runs a private practice focused on weight and metabolic health.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to New Roads, New Rules.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to join you all and talk about weight loss and menopause, which is always such a wild time.
It is,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, in general, it is. Life is, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And it's on the top of our list of things that people are asking for. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Yes. So when women come to you during this time of their life, whether it's perimenopause or menopause, what do you suggest in changing their habits or dealing with all of this as far as nutrition and weight loss goes?
Absolutely. I think it's a time where a lot of people, all of a sudden things start to change in your body, as you were saying, in so many different ways. But especially this, like, okay, I'm doing the exact same thing. Nothing has changed in my life. But now all of a sudden I'm putting on 10, 20, 30 and more sometimes pounds, and feeling like, okay, I know my body, I'm eating the same, I'm moving the same. And now all of a sudden my body is not responding in the way that it did before. And there's a lot that's going on underneath the surface. And a lot of this is actually driven by the changes in estrogen levels. So we think about the hormones in our body, we think about estrogen, we think about progesterone, and then even for women, we're actually thinking about testosterone as well. And we see declines across all three of these hormones. But estrogen in particular, the decline there, we have thousands of estrogen receptors in our body. So a lot of times people think about estrogen receptors with getting pregnant and, and other like in the sex hormone way. But the reality is it regulates a lot of things in our body. And we're not going to go into all of those, but heart health, brain health, like so many different things. And in perimenopause, so often in our 40s, and then certainly the menopausal shift in 50 and beyond, we start to see those declining levels. And that is one of the biggest drivers for all of a sudden, like, okay, nothing's changed, and now my body's not responding. So addressing that piece becomes really important. And then we think about, okay, well, what does that mean if I have metabolic disease? What does that mean in terms of the lifestyle changes? And the biggest ones we're going to emphasize are, okay, your body is going to respond differently, especially to more processed carbohydrates, but even carbohydrates in general. And so you may want to be doing less of those, or when you are eating them, really intentionally pairing them with certain types of exercise, like using them as fuel for your body after exercise, really leading into protein. When you are choosing carbohydrates, choosing ones that are really fiber rich, they stick with you and last. That fullness lasts for longer. From an exercise standpoint, exercise continues to be important, honestly, across any age span. I think if I could put one lifestyle intervention in a pill and give it to everyone in the world, it would be exercise. But starting to think about resistance training. So building that muscle can really support our underlying metabolic disease as well.
Right. I know I've been told just more weight training, You got to do more weight training to get rid of the visceral fat, more weight training. So I know that it's a big thing because it's more than a willpower issue. It's become more of just a biology shift in our bodies.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, exactly.
Agree. I've heard the same. And so the biggest determining factor is the estrogen dropping, right? That's the
Correct.
thing that is okay. Yeah. I knew it was the hormonal changes, but I wasn't sure exactly which hormone it was that was dictating the main dictator of the whole thing. So
that being said, testosterone, we think about testosterone as a male hormone, but the reality is females have testosterone as well. And the levels of that decline significantly, often in our 30s and beyond. And supporting testosterone can be really helpful as well, especially when it comes to supporting and building our muscle mass. Testosterone is a really significant driver of that. And so a lot of times people feel like, too, okay, I'm doing the same exercises maybe as I've done before, and my body's not responding the same way. And that sometimes is related to those declining testosterone levels. And so even in women, it may make sense to replace testosterone because our muscle mass may not respond the same. So there's a significant driver there as well.
Right.
That makes sense.
Really quick, when women start taking HRT, is it good to it's like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone? Is it good to take a combination of all three, or I'm considered post menopause because I had a partial hysterectomy years ago. So I know they're like, oh, you're post because you've been done with it for years. But would it be good to just take testosterone? Because it's got to be low in me, Right now I just on a patch, can you just take one, or do you have to combine all of them? Do you know?
That's a great question. So when we think about estrogen, typically we do recommend estrogen for female patients. The role of estrogen in most places in our body is very beneficial. In the uterus, the estrogen creates a thickening of the lining of the uterus, which in postmenopausal women can put them at risk for endometrial cancer or uterine cancer. So as a result of that, anyone who does still have a uterus, which it sounds like Terri in your case is not the case.
It's not the case.
I have one. Yeah. So Sandi, if you were using estrogen, you would have to take progesterone in order to protect the lining of the uterus. But someone who does not have a uterus does not have to take progesterone. So Terri, you could take estrogen alone. Sandi, if you took estrogen, you would also have to take progesterone. So the progesterone, it may still have benefits for people who do not require it, so people who do not have a uterus, but just is not required. So estrogen is really the main player here. The testosterone can be used on its own. The body does convert some testosterone to estrogen. So typically we would want to be thinking progesterone piece. Someone like yourself, Terri, who did not have a uterus, you could do estrogen and testosterone. You could do just testosterone with some of it being converted to estrogen. Usually we would consider both. But then someone who still has their uterus, we'd think about all three. We optimize estrogen, we add the progesterone, and then typically once those are stabilized, we can layer on the testosterone rather.
Fantastic.
All right. I have another question. Sorry, related to this. So what if somebody chooses not to do hormone replacement therapy? So I am not on anything, but I struggle with everything. This would also help me in my plight for weight loss and just equaling out everything, right? Or can I replace it with diet and exercise?
So when you're doing diet and exercise, they're going to do a lot in terms of the sort of secondary results of it. So we think about declining levels of estrogen and the impact on metabolic disease. The diet, the exercise, those may adequately support the metabolic disease piece. So the question becomes, is there another reason for me to utilize hormone replacement therapy? So if I'm thinking about brain health, if I'm thinking about bone health, are there other pieces? If I'm thinking about hot flashes and maybe poor sleep, which then can drive sometimes challenges with metabolic health, right? If you're not getting good quality sleep, the next day we know our bodies are more likely to be insulin resistant. So a lot of it ends up being a sort of chicken and the egg, but it may still have a lot of other impacts. And so lifestyle ends up impacting it sort of in a secondary way, if that makes sense.
Got it. Yeah, it does. Thank you for the follow-up question. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about why weight shows up differently. Like, why does menopausal weight tend to show up like just around your midsection? Like, it seems like every woman always like, oh, it's my belly. It's my belly. Like, why would that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually tied directly to what you were saying, Terry, when you talk about this idea of visceral fat. So we think about the different types of fat on our body, and we can think about subcutaneous fat, which is fat that we can see. It's on the outside of our body. It's fat that's on our arms. It's fat that's on our legs. It's fat that's on our abdomen. It's fat that's everywhere. It's sort of like the squishy fat, which sounds like a funny thing to say, but you can touch it, you can jiggle it, like you see it on your body. Visceral fat is the fat that's deep down inside our body. It's the fat that's in and our organs, and it's fat that can look almost a little taut. Like if you think of a man with a beer belly, for example, while that could be beer, a lot of times it is actually metabolic disease. So a lot of times people will have this visceral fat that's deep down inside. They don't see any, sort of squishy fat, which I know is a funny thing to say, but it's just like deep down inside.
Yeah.
So it's actually that shift during the declining levels of estrogen, the driving of metabolic disease that happens there, where we start to pack on weight viscerally. And so we start noticing it centrally. Now there can be, and there usually is both. So it's rarely exclusively just subcutaneous fat or just visceral fat. Typically we'll notice both of those two things together, but it's that deep down fat where people are noticing, okay, my clothes are feel a little bit differently. Even if I'm the same number on the scale, maybe my pants are a little bit tighter. I need to go up in a shirt size, for example. So that's that fat centrally. Again, we can address it with lifestyle pieces, but it's that underlying metabolic shift that's causing that to happen.
Wow. So that's good to know. So it's when my numbers aren't changing on the scale, but my pants are not fitting right. That means I'm getting rid of the visceral fat with the weight training.
Yes, exactly. And you see weight training, like that shift is fat, but I gain muscle, the number on the scale doesn't change, but you see the inches change, which the inches changing is honestly one of the best metrics to track, if not the best metric to track.
Oh, that's good to know.
Right,
definitely. So obviously the weight is harder to lose the later in life that we are. So because of the estrogen is what you were saying, right? So if I have, so as in women in my 50s, let's say I've already gone through menopause, I am on hormone replacement therapy, then it is eating right, exercising. So, right, it kind of all goes together for the perfect storm. Is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's never, a lot of times we like hone in on one piece or the other, like all of it together in anything makes sense, but we really want to optimize the lifestyle piece.
Okay. Got it.
Right.
Got it.
So let's talk about how we can lose menopausal weight then. So we know why we have it now. So let's talk about weight loss medications because that's a big part of your practice.
Yes.
And it is very popular now, and so what options are available today as far as that goes?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll dive into, we've sort of alluded to some of the lifestyle pieces, but whether we're talking about someone who's 20, someone who's 80, someone who's 50, male, female, there is, there are other pieces we want to think about lifestyle, but then there's the person for whom like they're doing all of those things. They're trying to eat a certain way. They're moving their body, they're working on other health conditions and they're like, my body is just not responding in the way that I want it to. And it's in those patients that we think about, does it make sense to start a GLP or another weight loss medication? The GLPs have become wildly popular because they really work and they're working on some of that underlying metabolic disease. So when we talk about GLP medications, the oldie but goodie is Ozempic. It's funny because Ozempic's actually only been around since 2017. It's the poster child because it's the medication that has been first really popularized. The exact same medication, Wegovy. So Ozempic's approved for diabetes. Then the exact same medication, Wegovy, is approved for weight. These are both semaglutide medications. And then more recently, we've seen the popularization of Zepbound and Mounjaro. Similarly, Zepbound is approved for weight. Mounjaro is approved for diabetes. These are both tirzepatide medications. But when we look at this whole class of medications, they go back about 20 years. So Byetta, the very first medication in this category, it was a GLP receptor agonist that was FDA approved for the treatment of type 2 diabetes. It was a twice-a-day injection. It wasn't super effective compared to some of our newer treatments. And so it was FDA approved in 2005, but never took off in popularity for the same reason, never got an FDA indication for weight or anything like that. But all of that to say, so we've got a lot of safety data with these medications. They've been around for a while, and they work on some of that underlying metabolic disease, which is why when you compare them to some of the older medications that may work on appetite, may work on cravings, may work on decreasing appetite or stimulating how we're burning. These are actually working on underlying insulin resistance. And then when you combine that with especially lifestyle changes, these medications can really be supportive in the person who's been struggling chronically with their weight, for whom lifestyle interventions has not been enough.
That's great. Yeah, I understand. It helps not think of food. Like it stops that, what do people say, the noise of it and all,
Food
right?
noise.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I have to say, so I have a little experience with this because I was on Ozempic a couple of years ago. I was prescribed Ozempic because I was I gained a lot of weight during menopause and and I was never a heavy child, so this was something I wasn't used to. My knees hurt, my hips hurt, everything hurts, when you start to gain a lot of weight. And my levels, like I was pre-diabetic, according to my doctor. So I was lucky enough to get it approved. And I have to say, yes, it curbed the cravings for sure. You don't have a big appetite, but I felt so much better. So I felt like I had more energy. I felt like I was healthy, even when I didn't lose it a lot, even at the beginning when I first started taking it, it made such a difference in my body, I feel. So I think that's what you're saying. I mean, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it goes beyond the cravings and not eating a lot, right? It just made me feel like, I don't know, more energetic. Is that because of what's in them?
Yeah, so these medications, the GLP receptor agonists, are targeting the GLP receptor, and we think about it in the role of metabolic health, which is regulated in our gastrointestinal system. We think about the role in our brain. So the primary two locations of those receptors are in our brain, in our gastrointestinal system. So they're regulating these pieces, but they regulate a lot of other things as well. They're involved in areas of heart regulation. So when we think about the heart beating efficiently, they're involved, especially some of the newer medications, we see them on adipose tissue, for example. So even on the fat cells themselves, the GIP receptor, which is on like the Zepbound and Mounjaro medication. And we look at these medications and it's kind of wild because we studied in other health conditions. So as you were saying, like from an energy, from an inflammation standpoint, a lot of people 1 to 2 weeks on these medications and they're like, wow, my inflammation is gone. Like I don't feel sort of swollen. I don't feel as icky. So there's a lot of other pieces that honestly, as of 2026, we don't even fully understand, but there are these secondary benefits of these medications as well. And we're starting to see them be approved for other conditions, like the heart conditions, for liver disease, and they're being studied in psoriatic and rheumatoid arthritis, in dementia, in PCOS, in liver disease, they're approved, in sleep apnea, they're approved. So we're seeing them across a lot of other areas as well, because they have pretty broad reaching impacts.
Yeah. I do know my brother-in-law was just approved for some medication through sleep apnea, even though he was pre-diabetic and all that. He wasn't approved, but they put down sleep apnea and the insurance company approved it. So because they're starting to look into it that way, I guess. So
yeah, exactly.
What do you think is important for people to know going in? Because I just want to preference this with, like, after I was on it for a year and a half, and then my levels all lowered. I felt healthier. I was 50 pounds lighter, which was fantastic. But then if you don't get in good habits working out, eating, what happens is you start to gain the weight back, and that happened to me. I did not get in good habits. I was just kind of taking for granted, this medicine is working, and I'm just along for the ride. So what would you tell somebody coming in new that's considering a GLP-1?
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the most important things is that these medications are really designed for long-term use. And if we think about a lot of other health conditions, like let's say we think about asthma, or we think about high blood pressure, or any other number of conditions, if someone has asthma and their doctor says, okay, here's this inhaler that you take every day, and then here's this inhaler that you take when you have symptoms, that inhaler that they take every single day, they're supposed to take that every single day long term. And maybe it evolves over time. There's a newer medication on the market, or it becomes a little bit more effective. But that medication is there treating, the underlying cause of their asthma, or helping to treat the underlying cause of it. Someone has elevated blood pressure. Maybe their doctor prescribes them a medication. Now their blood pressure comes into normal range. We don't say, okay, great, your blood pressure is normal. Go ahead and stop the medication. So I think one of the things that can be really challenging with these medications is, I think, especially in the popularization of them. For one, people may look at them as a cosmetic weight solution. So a lot of times people are looking at it for a 10 or 20 pound weight loss goal, we could talk for hours about using it in that context, which generally isn't great for that person. But when we think about it how do we support someone in their underlying health? A lot of times when it's just the one piece of the puzzle, and then we're still working on those other pieces, I have patients that get just phenomenal results on these medications. So if you look at what's the average weight loss on Wegovy, the average weight loss on Zepbound, we're talking about 15 to 20% total body weight, which can be impressive. And we see that happen, all of the time. In the clinical data, the trials were like, hey, eat a 500 calorie deficit, exercise 150 minutes. That was the extent of the lifestyle counseling. So they said, hey, go do those things. But, did people actually do them? Maybe yes, maybe no. And probably yes, to some extent, especially with the calorie deficit. It's easy to eat a calorie deficit if you're having a lot less appetite. But when it comes to, okay, what is the food that really fuels our body? When we think about increasing protein, getting good fiber, moving our body regularly, what's our relationship with our food? A lot of times that underlying behavioral piece, even things that are really subtle, like, okay, your mom taught you to clean your plate, for example, or you've had a bad day, you're turning to something food-wise, all of those pieces and working on those with a little nudge of the medication together is just magic. And we routinely see people lose 50% of their total body weight with these medications, because it allows the tool for all those things to keep working. But we don't just stop them when someone has achieved their goal. It's designed really for long-term use. So I think that's where the challenge really comes in. And especially for the patient, as you were saying, who sort of takes them, maybe even takes a pretty high dose of medications without doing a lot of the other pieces, or even being told to do a lot of the other pieces. It just doesn't have the same lasting impact.
Right.
Agree.
Well, I think that happens a lot, because I know some other people have been on it who ordered it off the internet, without really having a face-to-face with a doctor. So nobody's kind of keeping them accountable or anything, or checking in. And so I think it's easy at that point. They're like, oh, I hit my thing. That's it. I'm done. I'm not ordering it. And then it all starts coming back on, because I'm assuming that once they stop, they start getting those old cravings back, or those, that noise comes back. So I think that's, part of it. Now, I have to say, I've lost weight in the past year, and I strictly did it intermittent fasting, increasing. My thing was more so, one, I couldn't afford it. Medication, I didn't have insurance, and I could not afford it out of pocket because I had, life going on. So mine was more of a flip switch in my brain. Finally, as I've said before, at 55, I'm just like, okay, I need to do this for myself and not for anybody else. And that's kind of kept me going this past year and a half throughout all of this. Now, for women who can't afford weight loss medications or don't want to take them, what strategies are most effective for losing menopausal weight? What would you tell them?
Absolutely. So I would think about track food even in a very simplistic way. A lot of times I advocate for tracking food of just like, this is the time that I ate and this is what I ate, like in the notes app of your phone, in a notebook. We know calorie counting, macro counting. Unless we're actually weighing our food, we can do a really bad job of estimating how many things are actually in that. So kind of having a sense of what's already happening in the way that if you were trying to have a savings goal, you would look at, okay, what does my budget look like right now? Like take stock of what's actually going on right now. And while there are a lot of really phenomenal food plans out there, a lot of them are having you eat foods that aren't already in your routine. Maybe they're not your preferences. So starting to take a look at, okay, what am I actually doing? Because there's likely days where you're eating some foods that are really in line with your goals and you already like and they're convenient, etc. So start to just pay attention of time I ate. Like maybe breakfast is either eggs or it's yogurt or it's cereal. You might realize, okay, the eggs and a Greek yogurt option are totally in line with my goals. Cereal, maybe less so. So let me lean more towards those type of options. Paying attention to hunger and fullness, both when we're eating and when we're done eating. A lot of times we eat because there's food on the plate. We eat because it's noon and that's our lunch break. So am I actually hungry right now? Now you can still choose to eat. So middle of the afternoon, someone offers you a cookie, it can be a really great thing to just check in and like, am I hungry? Am I full? You can still choose to eat the cookie for pleasure, but being aware of I'm eating this for pleasure versus I'm eating this for, true physical hunger. A lot of really simple things like when we're eating carbohydrates, for example, to make sure that we're partnering them with protein especially, but even some healthy fat so that foods that we're eating stick with us longer. A lot of times we make the mistake of fueling our body constantly throughout the day. Even when it's healthy foods, I think this is the trap a lot of people get into. They're like, oh, I had a handful of grapes here and cherry tomatoes there. And it's just like all day long, there's just like a little bit of carbohydrate, even if it's fruit, even if it's vegetable. That does not lend itself particularly well to weight loss. And so eating less frequently with making sure to have protein, fat at meals, exercising regularly with both low impact, a lot of times something like walking can make a really big difference. There are so many people who are very sedentary. And so where are you at right now? And how do we start to build that up? Doing some resistance training. So I would say at least 2 days a week, but maybe even more if you can manage it, of lifting heavy weights, looking at pieces like sleep, make sure you're sleeping both enough hours of sleep as well as your quality of sleep is good. A lot of times you might have snoring, you might have restlessness, you might have lying on the phone until midnight syndrome, whatever piece is impacting your sleep, really addressing those. And then, like I said, that behavioral piece, which can be working with a therapist, that can be, there's a lot of great books and resources there. There can be things, even just online. I feel like behaviorally, there's so many great pieces. Having a buddy that you can be accountable to, like it doesn't have to be a high expense program, but it's slow, right? And it's like you look at all of these pieces together and it sort of builds up in this way of, I try to think about like 1% better. And I don't mean like morally better, but like 1% more in line with my goals every day. And all of a sudden, after a month, after 6 months, after a year, you become unrecognizable, maybe physically, but especially just emotionally, how you relate to food and the choices you're making and why you're making them. As you alluded to, Terri, a lot of times there's this big like why, like something just shifts and it's like, you know what, I'm done. Like I'm done with this thing. I'm starting over, and not in a hateful way, in this very like loving, convicted, I'm going to do it. And there is never full than a woman who is she is just in it, that is something powerful to that.
No, I just got fed up, and I agree. Like it becomes like this shift in I have people not believing me, but I'm just like, it's a mind shift. It's not because I'm not doing anything different that I didn't do before. I mean, granted, I did not journal. I use an app and whatever, because I don't weigh anything. I'm the laziest person. So just take a picture and it tells me what it is and, whatever. And that's how I've been journaling it and everything. And I didn't do that before. So I was probably the one who was grazing all day thinking I was doing fine because I'm eating the cherry tomatoes and I'm eating the cucumbers and I'm eating this, but I'm nonstop all day. But it just became a mind shift. And that was the biggest thing for me. And, and I think that's whether weight loss medication or just on your own, I think that's nothing's going to happen until it changes up here in your head. So,
well, I have to agree too, because I think that was one of my biggest mistakes is because when I was on Ozempic, for example, I was very aware of what I was putting in my body. I knew I needed more protein. I was very aware of my behavior, but then I went off of it. Well, and I also went off of it in the most stressful time of my life.
Right.
And so my mental, I was mentally oh, I need a treat. Oh, I'll go have that ice cream. You know what I mean? My mind, you have to be in the right mindset because, even during the most difficult, people handle stress differently, right?
Right.
Mine is oh, I worked hard today. I'm going to go get an ice cream or something. You know what I mean? And so those are mistakes. And I think what you're saying is, it's so important to have kind of people around you that are going to say, hey, maybe that's not what you want, or maybe let's celebrate in another way, Sandi,
Put it down, Sandi.
Right? Put it down. Step away from the freezer. Step away from the freezer. So I think mental is just as important of everything else. And I think habit forming is super key here. So thank you.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. The
I have a
behavioral
quick
piece.
question.
Yeah, that's it. Go ahead.
Right. No, I was just going to say on the flip side of that, and I don't know if you have patients that are dealing with this. My biggest thing that I am struggling with, and again, talking about mentally, are people's reactions to my weight loss. Negative reactions. I have had people say to me, oh, I didn't want to mention your weight loss. I thought maybe you were sick. I'm like, do I look sick?
No.
Or now I'm hearing you need to eat more. You're too thin. I'm like, I am not too thin. I, growing up, I always heard you need to lose weight. You'd be prettier if you lose weight. And now I've lost weight. And I'm like, what the heck? It is a mental fight everywhere you go. I can't get over it. And it's all weight loss stuff. I don't understand it. And I don't know, do you have clients that are having those issues? What do you tell them?
Yeah. Oh, every day. I mean, I think this is one of those unexpected things that, especially 6 to 12 months into the journey, the first 20 or 30 pounds, you notice and you're like, why doesn't anyone else notice? And then all of a sudden people you notice and you're like, why is everybody noticing? I wish people would shut up.
Yes.
Yeah. Every day. So every single day, I feel like I'm having this conversation with at least one patient because it'll depend on what they mean when we are choosing the response that we have. And so sometimes people are nice, they're trying to be nice, but their words may or may not align. So sometimes it's wow, you look great. And you're like, well, did I look bad before? What? Yeah.
Right.
What do you mean I look great? So, but if they mean it well, right? If they're a friend, they just make a comment, it's a passing thing. Typically I'm just roll with it.
I just say thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. How have you been doing recently? It's been a while since we've seen each other. I think there's a very big part of the conversation of just bring it back to the person. Now, let's say it's been a while since you've seen them. It's been 2 years since you've seen them. And they're like, oh my gosh, you've lost so much weight.
Right.
I have lost some weight. But a lot has changed. A lot of times. Spend some time, you could see things it's been a while since we've seen each other. Lots changed. What's been going on in your life? And that bringing it back to them, I think is a way of you acknowledge it and you just move on. Sometimes people though are getting pretty, they're like, did you lose those drugs? Or did you use those drugs? Are you taking that Ozempic or how'd you do it?
in a negative way, they say.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. Those drugs, like you're taking some sort of illicit drugs. And it's like, even if you didn't lose weight with the medications, people are still assuming
they
that
do
you did.
assume
So it's like there's nothing that you can say to appease the person. And so a lot of times, honestly, even saying something like, thanks for your concern. I don't really want to talk about my weight. Like, it's a health issue I'm addressing with my doctor. Yeah. I've been working on it. And just like draw a boundary if you need to. Right. But the piece I really like to tell people is you don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't owe them an explanation of if you are or are not taking medications. You don't need to tell them about your calorie counting or what you've been working on. Now, if it's your best friend, maybe you're going to dive into that. But when it's your like 2 blocks down neighbor that you don't know super well, that is none of their business. And I think sometimes we feel like we owe someone an explanation, especially when they start like, oh, how'd you do it? And this, like, you're not their doctor. Like, it's none of their business. You don't have to, you want to tell someone if you were taking a blood pressure medication or a depression medication, like, it's none of their business. And so I keep it very simple and just bounce the conversation back to them.
Yes. Yeah, you're not. I am.
I did get that a lot, and I did get that a lot, and I was on Ozempic, so I was very honest, but also I tried to highlight that. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Like, I have so much more energy. I'm so much happier, and it wasn't even. I mean, from the get-go, I would kind of try to sing the praises of Ozempic because I mentally and physically felt so much better than I did when I wasn't on it, Right. So I just tried to focus on the positive, but there were a lot of comments, about it.
I mean, I'm just so shocked at, like, there have been people who prior to my weight loss, like, would not even realize I was in the room or talk to me, because I don't know, I was heavier or whatever. And now I've got this weight loss and they're talking like, hi, how you doing? What are you doing? Blah, blah. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what? And I'm just so surprised.
It's so gross,
like, I'm just so surprised about it. And I don't know why, I always say I'm peopled out, and this is part of the peopling out, I just, I am kind of shocked by it all, but I just, again, I do, like you said, have to remember my boundaries. It's none of their business. If I, and I'm good. I'm using my dessert size plate, and this is what I eat off of. Leave me alone.
Yeah. And
I love that.
Yeah, like one of my favorite things is even just like calling them out on how awkward they're being, of like, that's a really weird thing to say, or like, did you mean to say that out loud? Because especially for the person who points out something that you're like, this is working for me. Like, why are you like, oh, that's a really weird comment to make. And making them feel awkward in response, like, that's a good one too. So I just had to
I'm going to use that. Yeah, I'm using that comment. Did you mean to say that out loud?
I like that one. Yes, I like that the best.
I like
that the best. Yeah, let's use it. I love it.
I will be using that all the time. But I love that there's not just one path. There's not just medication. There's, other options for people in general for weight loss during menopause, or guys who need to lose it, in their stage of life.
Especially women during menopause. Like, I mean, I know a lot of them that feel hopeless and stuck, and like there's all the emotions that come with the hormone imbalance. And it's nice to know that there are many paths, like you said. I love that.
Right. So, Sarah, what's the most important thing you want menopausal women to hear when it comes to weight and health?
Absolutely. I think knowing that, like, it's not your fault. I think that so many of us, the society that we've grown up in, has so much weight bias. There's so much desire for thinness, especially for anyone born between, I think, the 60s and the 90s, there's like the thinner, the better. Right. Exactly.
Yes.
And that mentality, then, as we feel like we're less in control of our bodies, there's so much blame and shame that comes up. And so recognizing there are pieces of this that I don't say are out of my control, but there are pieces of this that are not my fault. Like, my body is changing, and I can learn to love and support my body where it's at right now and recognizing I just need to reconnect with myself. What my body needs right now may look very different 5, 10, or 20 years from now. And so I think knowing that things are different and that's okay, and there can be a path forward.
That's great. Now, Sarah, how can women reach you if they want an assistance from a doctor and don't know where to go? How can they reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am now located in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I do still see patients in Illinois, though. It's been amazing what we can do via telemedicine. You know, I think 2020 and all the COVID era taught us that. So for anyone who is in Illinois, I do still see patients virtually throughout the state of Illinois. And I think what's really powerful in the way I support patients is we're looking at all of those pieces. It's not just, okay, here's your Ozempic prescription, good luck, go figure it out. It's not just, okay, you should eat less and move more. It's really comprehensive. We're checking in 1 to 2 times per month with people with face-to-face visits, as well as then having like any questions that you have. Like me and my team, we're on it usually always within hours, but usually within minutes. Like we're there to really support our patients. So I do have a podcast called the Conquer Your Weight podcast that's available weekly. I also have a website. My name is sarahstombaughmd.com. So I'll make sure that you guys have that so you can share that with people.
Yes,
so www.sarahstombaughmd.com, where you can learn more, find the podcast. I've been trying to get all over social media because there's just some crazy stuff out there in this space. I'm sure y'all see all the time too. And so getting some good evidence-based information out there too.
That is great. We want to thank you so much for coming on with us, Sarah, and answering all of our off-the-wall questions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you guys today. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
Of course.
Roadies, this is the part of the show where we turn it back to you.
Because if this episode made you think, oh, wow, that explains a lot, you're definitely not alone.
No. So here's your turn for this week.
It's your turn. Let's hear what you have to say.
Ask yourself, where have I been blaming myself for changes that are actually hormonal or biological?
And where have you been thinking, I should be able to control this, instead of asking, what support does my body need right now?
Right.
Yeah.
We'd love you to take a minute, literally just a few minutes, and reflect on that. You can write it down, think about it. We want you to share it with us on our platform, newroadsnewrules.com, or any of our social media. You can join us out on there, right?
Yeah, and if you're comfortable, tell us what part of today's conversation hit home for you.
Right. A lot of it hit home for me, man. Like I could have quizzed her on like multiple things.
Yeah, for sure. And also there's so much more to say. Like she's only scratched the surface. So we will share her podcast. We'll share her contact information. I think that's all very important.
Absolutely. But now it's time of our rule of the week, right, Sandy?
Yes. What is it?
And now it's time for the rule of the week.
Well, menopause is not a personal failure. It's a biological transition, and you're allowed to get some support. Let's remember that. I think women hit that because we're going along in life, and all of a sudden, like something's changing out of the blue, and we don't know what's happening, right?
Right, and that support might look like a medical guidance. It might look like changing how you eat or move. It might look like rest, boundaries, or asking better questions.
And also might look different for every woman, and that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
You know, what Sandy goes through, I might not be going through, and vice versa, and that's okay. I mean, that's why we're talking about it right now.
Right. Like the old rule on weight loss was just try harder, right? Just try harder. But the new rule says listen to your body and respond with compassion. Yeah,
which is something that we have been talking about on multiple episodes. So
yes. And I really did learn a lot in this one.
I did. Well. I know. Roadies, we are so glad you're here. If this episode helped you, share it with a friend who also needs to hear it, and share it with us come talk to us out on the chat board at newrules.com.
Right. Absolutely. Right? And we will see you next week.
Yes.
Same road, new rules.
Absolutely. See you then.
But you're my bestie for life.